morning, everyone. We're going to make a start on today's workshop. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Our workshop today is going to last approximately 90 minutes. So we will be finishing at 1 o'clock. This is our second workshop together. And thanks to lots of you who have come back after our last session, only a matter of weeks ago. So we will be recording part of the workshop, not the breakout sessions, but the main sessions, and the recording of workshop 1 is already available now on the website. Workshop 2, the recording will be available on the website by the next time that we come together. We will be using Slido, and although this may be new for some of you, it is fairly easy to use. So if you've got a smartphone ready, you may need to download a QR scanning app, but don't worry if you haven't got a smartphone and you don't want to use Slido, that's fine. You can post your comments and responses in Zoom chat. So if possible, it'd be great if you can have your video on, particularly when we get into breakout sessions, as it helps improve the quality of the conversations that we'll have together. Please keep your microphones on mute when you're not talking. And as I've mentioned, we're going to be using Slido and Zoom, the chat box, throughout the session. There could be a lot of us on the call, so don't worry if you can't keep up. Please, can you also use Twitter to share your experiences during and after the workshop, and the hashtags are there for you to take note of. So we will be producing a brief after workshop report that will include information from the chat, as well as a synthesis of some of the discussions that have happened in the breakout sessions and in the main group as well. And the report for that will be available on our website by our next workshop. This is our second workshop in a series of 6 with a narrative arc that runs across the series. These are designed as standalone sessions, so you can dip in and out, but would encourage you to attend as many as possible. So our series aims to understand what was different about improvement during the pandemic, and to explore what this means for individuals' personal skills development. But we also want to pay attention to and help people focus on what it means for their teams, for their organisations, and for the wider improvement community as well. So these are the dates of the future workshops. As you see, 13th of July have already been undertaken, and there we are today, already in August, believe it or not, the 3rd of August. So at the first workshop, we set a lot of the context looking at recent research. We spent some time reflecting and discussing the skills that may have come to the fore, skills that have been used less, but also skills that were newly used during the COVID pandemic. And from the participants' poll in workshop 1, the interest in skills to cultivate relationships was the priority for us to explore together. So that forms the focus of today's workshop. So here's some of the principles for how we will learn together. These are interactive sessions, and we've designed activities to support you to have useful conversations by learning together through collaborative and peer learning. We want this to be a safe and supportive space for people to share openly with each other, recognizing that this can be a difficult time for many of us. From feedback in workshop 1, some of you wanted to find out a bit more about Lab Cymru. So if you'd like to find out more, please contact the team for an informal chat. We would love to hear from you. Each session in the series is shaped by the feedback that we receive from you. So today's session has actually been shaped by the feedback and learning from the first session that we held together. And we aim to give you the time and space to process your thoughts in breakout rooms, but also some time at the end for individual reflection, and to consider of the learning that you've made today and the actions that you wish to take forward. So here is the team that is delivering today's workshop. We have obviously myself, Dominic Bird. I'm Head of Capacity and Capability within Improvement Cymru, and I've got Des and Mandy from the Q Lab Cymru team with me today. We've got Joe from the Q Health Foundation team, and Mark, Bethan and Sue from Improvement Cymru. Our case example contributors are Nigel, Rebecca and Michaela, and our breakout contributors are Caroline, Gito, Amanda, Hugh, Natalie and Rebecca. So now I'm going to hand over to Des to introduce today's session.
Thank you, Don. Good morning, everybody. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview on the focus for today's workshop. Don's already mentioned that as part of the context setting workshop 1, we reviewed some research, and through the poll of participants, they've voted on something that's important to them, and that will be the focus for today. But first, let me just say that over the past few months, we've heard that there appears to be a real appetite for newfound collaborations to continue as teams look to the future. We'll hear more about that from our contributors today. So one of the tools that might be of use to support everyone in making this a reality is a Skills for Collaborative Change framework developed by Q and Nesta that looks at the skills and attitudes needed for collaborative change. So this framework will be used within this workshop series as a practical tool to identify individual or team strengths and areas that might need development. So as I mentioned, through the poll of workshop 1, the focus is on a core skill of how we bring people together. And specifically within that, we're going to look at cultivating relationships during today's workshop. We'll explore that in a bit more depth. So to help us do that, we're going to use a model from Nesta, which is based on taking action and actually doing things. We'll approach learning together as shown on this slide, and our workshop design aims to thread these 4 principles through every aspect of this workshop series and beyond. So just quickly, a brief overview of these 4 aspects. So learning with peers from experts. So how we're going to do this today, we're going to hear from colleagues who have had hands-on experience and expertise in doing improvement. We'll also have an opportunity to hear from expert with lived experiences, which I'm really excited to hear today. And we'll hear case study examples in our main room, and you'll also hear from guest contributors in our breakout rooms. Next, we're going to look at learning by doing. And today, we'll have opportunities for sharing experiences and discussions with others, as well as time and space for some reflection. So we'll do this reflection on learning by doing. Then we're going to move on to learning for action. And we're going to do this by being inspired by each other. We've all got some experiences and lived experiences to share. We'll create impact by formulating actionable goals. So how we're going to act after this workshop or this workshop series. And also by deciding on actions, small or big, of doing things differently to generate better outcomes using a skills continuum, which we'll introduce to you a little bit later. And then we're going to look at learning beyond the workshop. So we're going to start by exploring how we might elongate the learning experience, how we want to hear from improvers who are using their skills in their daily practice, and you'll hear about how to join the Q Cymru network. So I'd like to introduce you to Michaela Morris, Rebecca Hamler, and Nigel Haller. We're going to share key learnings and themes emerging from their work. And I'd encourage you, while they're talking to you and sharing their experiences, to engage in the Zoom chat or Twitter throughout the presentation with any comments or questions that you may have.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nigel. I live with dementia in Swansea, and I'm very pleased to be here today as part of this workshop. I'm joined by Rebecca Hanmer and Michaela Morris of Improvement Cymru Wales. So with no further ado, I'll hand you over now to Rebecca, who'll do the first part of this workshop.
Thank you, Nigel. Next slide. So in 2018, the Welsh Government launched a Dementia Action Plan. This set out a clear vision for dementia care in Wales. So Improvement Cymru aim, developing a diagnosis, care and support pathway, and we call this the Pathway of Standards. So over the past 2 years, we've engaged and listened to understand what matters most to people receiving, delivering dementia care across Wales. This helped build relationships, and over 1,800 people were involved. And we asked what would really make a difference. Next slide, please. And next slide. So this slide shows the ingredients. You cannot co-produce without engaging with people, understanding the culture of collectively learning and sharing. Here are some of the stakeholders involved in this journey. Next slide, please. Over to Michaela.
Okay, so what matters most to you about relationships? It was essential to understand from all people at all levels and grades, most importantly, people living with dementia and their carers, what really matters most to them about dementia. To have this conversation, to support this journey, it was important to understand the relationships between people, services and cultures across the organisations, and those receiving care were involved in this journey also. So on the call today, we have many people from different areas, services and organisations, and we would like you to explore what matters most to you about relationships in your area of work. Mandy's going to load a Slido. So to do this, we would like to invite you to go to Slido and tell us in no more than 3 words what matters most to you about relationships. So Mandy's going to load the Slido and we'll hear from you all about what matters most to you in relationships. So Mandy, are you loading the link to the Slido?
Hi, can you hear me, Michaela?
Yes.
It doesn't seem to be working for some reason. Can people pop it into chat, please? And so if you could just do that as that's what matters the most. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mandy. So yes, pop it into the chat. 3 words that sum up what matters most to you about relationships. And we'll monitor the chat and carry on with the presentation, I think, Mandy. So go into the next slide. Thank you. So this slide shows our work programme in its infancy. We built on this, connecting with people to develop the standards. A come and join us approach was used. And there's a link in the chat also to the dementia care pathway of standards. So that can show you what we actually produced by undertaking this engagement and building these relationships. We made time to scope, learn and connect and start to form networks, cultivate relationships, which obviously supports a better culture. This is a key reason and motivation for all people to change and improve. And so one of our key learning points from this, so the next slide, please, Mandy, was taking the time to appreciate the importance of relationships with one another. And on to the next slide.
Thank you, Michaela. And people are putting some great things in the chat regarding what matters most to them about relationships. We've got trust there, we've got respect, and we've got honesty. And honesty seems to be coming up quite a lot, and open communication. So thank you very much for participating in that. So what did we do to cultivate relationships? So we took the programme to the people in each region. So we did 35 events in 6 months, and listed at the slide on the slide is the events that we undertook. So it was key to curating the space and time and supporting people to explore and understand the vision, developing a shared purpose and knowing each other's values and beliefs, have a voice and learn together, and keeping people connected. Building the relationships, we found so many people wanted to be part of this journey, and people shared the standards and made pledges to support improvements into actions at service and practice level. So we created and shared an ultimate purpose for dementia care, and we had fun, we ate chocolate, we drank tea, and we ate biscuits during this time. So a link to the resource from the Foundations of Nursing Study is in the chat. And that shows some of the methodology that we used alongside others. Over to you, Michaela.
So another approach was using appreciative inquiry and using the 5 key elements. So that's having conversations with people continuously, cooperating and ensuring all voice and ideas are heard. So cooperation was one of the elements. Co-creating, sharing ideas and using imagination. We used evoke cards, drawings, other creative methods to open up people's ideas. Another key element was co-design. So everybody engaged and creatively thinking what the design and the delivery, what it should look like for the future. And then the 5th one was about continuation. So we've constantly refining thinking. People told us how it should look and how it could be delivered. And that was the blueprint for us to take forward. We went to conferences in Wales and England, asking people what would make a difference. This built relationships outside of Wales for us, where we could gain support as a valued critical friend. We collaborated with other organisations such as the School of Care Sciences at Swansea University, where we held workshops to explore significant experiences through magic and tragic stories of service delivery. We explored what went well, what we need to build on, along with what we could improve. So relationships are built through these shared experiences, taking the time to listen to each other and validate people's experiences. Relationships have strengthened because of these approaches. We have connected and networked, we've offered space and time, we've listened and we've explored together. We encourage and nurture, gently nudging others to get involved, to give their views and experiences, and to stay connected in the programme and its aims. So people are now seeing the vision. There's a link to the Magic Moments resource in the chat that Mandy will pop in as well. But I'd now like to hand you over to Nigel, who's going to ask us a few slides. Could we have the next slide, please, also?
Thanks, Michaela. I'm kind of curious. I've been part of this process. I know why I'm on it, but can you tell me, Rebecca, why did you choose to do it this way?
Oh, that's a great question, Nigel. Well, fundamentally, I really felt it was the right thing to do. I mean, why would you not want to seek the opinions of the experts that you're working with? That's people living with dementia, their carers, people providing and also connected to services. I firmly believe it's really important to tap into people's geniuses, and that's everybody's geniuses, to really make sure we get the best outcomes for people, and also to know we're on the right path. Thank you.
Okay, Rebecca, Michaela? Same question for you.
Oh, thank you, Nigel. So similar for me. I think this approach is quite instinctive for me. It's always about people. We don't do this very well sometimes as organisations. You know, having worked for a long time with many different organisations, it's sometimes where we go wrong. Often you can say that we've got stated values, but actually we don't often hear them sometimes translated into practice. So for me, it's about building those strong relationships, working really hard at it. And it is hard, but if you can cultivate and sort of maintain the relationships, it's important, because we need to get to a stage where we work together, where we create together, and then we actually will achieve together. And so for me, it's the people have the voice. We don't have the answers, they do. That's why we work this way.
Okay, we've got 30 seconds left, Rebecca. We'd like to have a go at, has this changed you?
I don't think it's changed me as a person, but what I have noticed is that during this journey is that I feel that the level of engagement has changed across the regions and across services, and people, I feel, are really wanting to make improvements, really make things even better than they were before for people living with dementia and their carers. Thank you, Nigel.
Fantastic. Right, that's now 10 minutes up. I'll just leave you with one thought quickly. It's not co-production that brings about relationships and change. It's relationships and change that bring about co-production, in my view. Thank you so much. Next slide, please. Here are the contact details of the 3 presenters you just heard, or 2 or 3 anyway. Should you have any more questions. Next slide, please.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca, Michaela and Nigel. And some of you in the breakout rooms be able to get into a bit more depth on what they've just said. So reflecting on what you've just heard, what stands out for you? I'm happy for you to share that in the chat. But the icing on the cake for us would be if somebody would be prepared to open up your mic and just share that with us.
Des, I'm not sure whether we should put a hand up. I don't know how to put my hand up.
That's all right, just go for it.
Just go on to the mic. I think the thing that stands out for me is that commitment to keep working at those relationships, to create that space, time, reflection, keep on listening, even when it's tough and even when sometimes things don't sit together very easily. It's that ongoing commitment to keep that conversation going and continue to learn from it, and actually putting people at the very center of it and being open in that way.
That's great. Thank you, Andrea. And a couple of comments in the chat. Lou Waters, love that last thing Nigel just said about relationships and co-production.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Des, it's Paula here. I just wanted to echo what Andrea said, and I think for me what stood out is this short presentation. It is so fantastic, really demonstrated the so what. We talk about co-production, and I think, Nigel, your ending statement just said it all really. It's the relationships bring about the co-production, and you know, it's really important. Michaela's saying that it's hard work forging those, you know, we hear people talk about it, but I think this presentation has shown us the so what, and has shown us how you know, what really it starts with relationships and change that bring about that co-production. It's a word that's bandied about, co-production, and I think this presentation has clearly demonstrated how to do it.
That's great. I 100% agree with you on that one, Paula. And we'll get into a bit more of that hopefully for the rest of the workshop. But what we're going to do now, without further ado, is we're going to explore learning by doing. And we're going to be doing this in breakout rooms. Before you get into your breakout rooms, and this will be done automatically, so no need to worry about that. Really helpful, thank you. Okay, so what we're going to do next is move on to taking an opportunity just to think about learning for action. So just as a reminder, this is learning for action, which helps us in stimulating or inspiring us to do things in new ways, and also in deciding on actions, small or big, of doing things differently to generate better outcomes in terms of the work that we're doing with others. So to help us do this, I'm going to introduce a couple of tools that will hopefully help to develop or further develop our skills to cultivate relationships. Now, from previous feedback we've had, we know that you value time and space for reflection. So what I'm going to talk through now is our effort to hopefully support you in that. All right. So we're going to be looking at a continuum created by Nesta that looks specifically at 3 aspects of building bridges or cultivating relationships. The first approach of the continuum is around approaching situations or challenges. And here the question we're going to ask ourselves is, do we approach situations or challenges by concentrating on a single concept or view that needs to get done, expecting people to accept and adopt it, or by being open and inclusive to other viewpoints, actively seeking the opportunity to establish shared language, which again I think Kylie's just articulated, beliefs and understandings so that people are on the same page. So in reality, most of us are probably somewhere in between, but again, as improvers, there's always room to improve and develop. The next area we'll consider is how we make decisions. And here we can ask ourselves, do we do this by setting a common ground based on the authority of a small group of actors, careful planning and messaging to bring other people on board with the work, or by creating common ground to be inclusive through engagement and bringing different people's ideas and beliefs early on into the process. And again, for most of us, we may be somewhere in the middle of that continuum. And the final aspect we're going to consider is to ask ourselves, how do we interact with people, tools, or systems? Do we do this by using formal platforms to have a conversation, which can stifle debate and make it hard for outsiders to engage in the discussion, or by helping people to make sense of different points of view and translating concepts from one domain into another to create common ground? And again, for most of us, we're probably somewhere in between on this, but we're all here as improvers to hopefully continue improving how we do what we do. And the second tool we're going to use is a model for reflection developed by Rolf, Freshwater, and Jasper that asks 3 simple questions: what, so what, now what? And I know some of you will already be familiar with this particular model, but hopefully what we're going to go on to do will help you see it in a slightly different light. So it begins by asking us to consider a what question, as in, what do I do? Next, we can deepen the reflection by asking ourselves a so what question, as in, so what does that mean to us? And then we can take reflection further by asking a now what question that will help us consider ways of doing things differently. Okay, that's just a brief overview there. So the tool we've created is based on the continuum from Leicester and combined with the model for reflection by Rolf and colleagues. So today we've got time to go through one of these aspects. We're going to go through approaching situations or challenges. So we'll spend a little time reflecting, in reflection, and ask the what, so what, and now what questions in relation to this. So what we're going to do is give you a bit of individual reflection time by combining the what question with the approaching situations or challenges continuum. So looking at the continuum, reflect on it by asking, what do I do when approaching a situation or challenges? We'd like you to make some notes for yourself, and these are personal, so we're not going to ask you to share them, and you'll have 1 minute to do this. Okay, so if we could start now. So we're going to engage with the next question now. And this one's going to be, so what does that mean for me as an improver? So again, I'd like you to make some notes for yourself. I'll give you 1 minute. And if you can take some reflection time to think about that particular question in relation to approaching situations or challenges. And this minute starts now. Okay. Just before we get into a now what question, just a reminder that a now what question is useful for stimulating or inspiring us to do things in new ways, and also helping us on deciding and formulating as actionable goals, small or big, ways of doing things differently to generate better outcomes. So with this in mind, I'm going to ask you the final question in this reflective activity. That question is, now what can I do to nudge my practice as an improver further along the continuum? Okay, so again, we'd like you to make some notes. I'll give you a minute to do this, and your minute starts now. Okay, that was your final minute there. Now we've only had time to consider one aspect of this model for reflection, as time has been constrained today, but we're going to share a resource with you that you can use to fully explore and reflect on your practice as an improver beyond this workshop. So that's going up in the chat. And if for any reason you can't download it now, the resource will be available on our Lab Cymru website, and then it will be posted out to you as an email.
I'm going to hand over about Mark Wilson from Improvement Cymru, who leads the development of Q in Wales.
Hi, and thank you, Dom. Yeah, so just wanted to talk a little bit about Q. So yes, I'd just like to say it's a great place to network, really, with like-minded individuals. And I think that's something that was mentioned earlier on, is that even with this event on its own, there'll be a great place we can actually meet other people who have similar interests, in which when you visit the Q website, you can look at their special interest groups as well. And each of those, again, will have specific kind of interests that people can actually tap into. And that's across the 4 nations then as well. Regularly, there's events and there's workshops on there. You can actually post. It's a great place where you can post to put out the call out for support and draw experience from across the 4 nations. And I think one of the best thing as well is it's completely free as well. So there's no cost to the membership. And I think we did see there's about 33% of the people here today who aren't a member. And if you would like to look to join Q and would need any support, please contact myself or contact Q and just ask them. But there is a bit of a flow chart on the website as well to kind of talk through step by step. And yeah, it's a great place. It's a really good place to meet like-minded individuals. And I'll be putting out the Q newsletter for Q Cymru as well today as well. So if for any reason you don't receive the newsletter as well, please let me know. But if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat and I'll be happy to answer them the best I can.
Brilliant, thanks, Mark. So just bringing us to a close then, keen to hear about your learning into action beyond the workshop. So how you're nudging your practice. I've scribbled my notes and I'll be considering how I can nudge my practice along that continuum over the coming weeks. So please do share experiences on Twitter, but please get in touch with the team directly if you've got any other feedback or any other comments or anything you want to link up with. So our next workshop is on the 24th of August. Registration opens on the 9th, so not too far away, and the save the date will be sent on. Please pass this out to your wider networks as well. It'd be great to get more and more people involved in these discussions and build a strong network of improvers together. So I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone for their participation today. A massive thank you to our case example contributors and our breakout room hosts for their support. Diolch yn fawr and enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye all.